What's up guys, Mason the Brock Henderson here, and I realize the title of this video might be a little bit confusing and maybe even sound like I'm bitter, stuff like that. But what I really mean by rant is I can't really review it since I didn't see the game. Unfortunately, somebody that I know texted me. I was still asleep at this point because I'd had a tournament this entire weekend, and so I was going to watch it later. I had taped it, but then somebody who's an Arsenal fan that I know texted me and was like, "Oh, look at that Courtois penalty," and then put a lot of shields. I'm like, "Oh, gee, I wonder what happened." So I don't know. I looked up. Obviously, after that, I knew Arsenal had won, and so when I found out the score was 1-1 and they'd won on PKs, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch the highlights because it just didn't seem like an interesting game. You know, if it's I knew there was a red card because I saw 10-man Chelsea. I knew obviously one and one, 2 goals were scored. If there had been like 3-3, or if it had been like a high scoring game, if it had been maybe the penalties were crazy, which the setup for the penalties sounds crazy to me. I don't know. It just didn't seem to be that interesting of a game, especially considering it's the Community Shield. So I just watched the highlights. I wanted to see some of what happened. You know, what's this controversy over the Willian, getting yellow carded for simulation? Was the Pedro red card worthy of it? How did the goals happen? What happened with the PKs? I wanted to see all of that. So I just watched the highlights to see a lot of what happened, and I decided I did want to talk about it because there are certain things that need to be brought up and mentioned, and this is all with the thought in mind that this is just the Community Shield. You know, it's not the FA Cup final. Is basically what I'm trying to say. But there are certain things that happened in this game, and then when you take into account what happened in the FA Cup final last year, there are certain things that need to be addressed. And so I just wanted to address those really fast. And what I'm going to call a rant, but what's really just going to be me sort of bringing up some points that hopefully, whoever watches this, maybe you guys can comment down below, and we'll discuss what's going on. But first of all, let's talk about the refs, because obviously I'm a person, if you watch my other videos, you know I can't stand referees. Because for the most part, they're kind of stupid. You know, there are certain referees that do a good job. There are certain referees that can handle themselves pretty well. But for the most part, certain referees are just idiots. Whether it's they don't see things correctly, or they make decisions based on their emotions instead of deciding it based on what happened. There are a lot of referees that just let their emotions get to them, let the crowd get to them, let their perception get to them, instead of just calling the game how it is. And there's there's just moments where you're just like, how could you possibly miss this? How could you not see that Sanchez handballed it and then there was an offside? How could you miss all of this and let them have a goal? Stuff like that. That gets really frustrating. I know I'm not the only one, and it's not just happening to Chelsea. You know, I see all the ones that happen to Chelsea because I'm a fan, but I know for a fact that it happens to a lot of teams. You know, if you come to the MLS, probably several moments where the referee's making big mistakes. But the reason that I bring it up here is because this is the second time we faced Arsenal in Wembley in kind of like a final-esque atmosphere. You know, because this wasn't really considered a final. The FA Cup final obviously was. Both games, there are decisions that are game-changing decisions going against us. And Arsenal now in the FA Cup final, Sanchez handball. I forget who it was that was offsides now, but somebody was offsides and they score a goal. Referees missed it all. Today, Willian clearly tripped up in the box. Bellerin catches him with his knee on his back foot, which bangs it into his other leg, causes him to go down, and now Willian's being booked for diving. And the referee missed it. Stuff like that. You know, that stuff is game-changing decisions. Because when you don't make that call, or when you decide to book him for simulation, you're changing the game. You know, they should not have had a goal early on because it should have been a handball or it should have been offsides. You don't call either of them. You let them have the goal. game's officially changed. Now all of a sudden they're a goal up, Chelsea's trying to claw their way back into it. Yeah, it's difficult. Today, Willian gets tripped up in the box, doesn't get a PK for it, it's still 0-0 at halftime. That changes the game. If we get a goal there, who knows what could happen? Maybe Arsenal opens up earlier, maybe Chelsea uses that to counterattack on them. Or maybe if they do get it, maybe Arsenal just takes it to them and scores two. Who knows what could have happened, but you don't call that the game's changed. So here's the thing. If it's happening in a regular league game, if this were a regular league game, a 1-1 draw, who'd care? Okay, yeah, that probably should have been a penalty. Yeah, we should probably won it because we should have had another goal. But in the grand scheme of things, this happens. It's a league. It's going to happen over the entire course of the league. There are going to be some games where we get fortunate calls. There are going to be some games where we get unfortunate calls. But these are tournaments. These are you lose, you're out moments. They should not be decided based on one man's decisions in the middle of the field. And this is where, obviously, a lot of the video assistant referees are starting to be used more and more. This is where I think these should be mostly run by a video assistant referee. Beyond just, we're just going to do it for goals and offsides and red cards and mistaken identity. All that, that's the only thing they use it for most of the time. I think just don't use it except for tournaments. Whether it's just the final, whether you want to do the semifinal and the final, I say use it here. And use it often. Because, think about it. This is one game and you're done. This is not over 38 games you get so many refereeing decisions, bad and good. This is you get one game and the referee just happens to be an idiot and he makes two bad calls in one game and you lose and you're done. And the other team wins, and they're through, or they've won the trophy, based on one man's decision. That's not right. And so, based on what I saw today, Willian definitely should have had a penalty, definitely should not have been booked for diving. Pedro's, it was bad. Was it worthy of a red? I thought it was harsh. Maybe, obviously, Arsenal fans will probably say not. But even if it's not harsh, I saw a couple other challenges that probably should have been worthy of more than a yellow, and they ended up with just a yellow. So, you got to call it both ways. That's another thing that the VAR could add. They look at it and say, okay, well, that one worthy of a red or worthy of a yellow. That one similar challenge, so also worthy of a red or a yellow. It would just help so much, and the referees wouldn't have so much of a burden placed on them. Because I get the fact that these are big situations, these are big games, and sometimes that does get to you. I realize the referees are human. They're going to make mistakes. But it's the big mistakes. It's the ones you miss penalties, you miss goals, you miss something. Those are the decisions that need to be implemented into the game. The game-changing decisions need to be implemented. Because this is the second time in a row we've lost a trophy to Arsenal because of a referee making one bad decision that completely changes the rest of the game. So it's got to improve. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know if they are going to go to VAR. In my opinion, I don't think you need it for every match because, first of all, it probably gets expensive to use it. Second of all, it would probably take a bit away from the game, to have this, you scored a goal, hang on, don't celebrate yet, we got to make sure it is a goal. It would take away a lot from the match, but if you do it for these tournaments, then it's like, okay, we get it, this is a big deal, you can't not use VAR, you can't not make sure that these referees are making good decisions in these moments. So, those are my 2 cents on the referees. Another part of the rant I want to get into is a bit more Chelsea focused. Just because there are a few decisions, there are a few moments that I saw in the highlights that I do want to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about the penalty kicks, just because I saw a lot of people complaining about certain things and certain decisions made in the PK shootout. I just want to point out the fact, again, this is the Community Shield. A lot of people, obviously not just Chelsea fans, but I saw a lot of Chelsea fans too that were like, why is Tebow taking it? Why is he the one taking a PK? It's the Community Shield. It's not the FA Cup final. If this were the FA Cup final, we would have had the best of the best being the first up to take it. Because it's the beginning of the season, we're going to let Tebow take it. And on top of that, he buried one against PSG a couple years back whenever I saw them play in North Carolina. He buried one like upper 90 to win the PK shootout. So he can do it. It's just today he mishits it. But it's the Community Shield. You got to realize that he's not going to take it regular season. He's not going to take it in an FA Cup final, even in the League Cup final. Probably you wouldn't take it. So I don't know. I kind of want to throw that out there for all the Chelsea fans that are complaining about it. But just my 2 cents there. As far as the lineup is concerned, it's hard for me to say. Like I said, I didn't get to actually watch the game, but from what I could see from the highlights, there were a few good moments, and there were a few bad moments. So let me just talk about what I did see. I saw a few moments where defensively we still look a little bit weak. I don't know if that's because we're still not really gelling as a defense. I'm not really sure what exactly is going on back there. But Azpilicueta still looks out of sorts. I still saw a few moments where he's making a bad touch or he's not closing down the same way he used to. Just based on the few moments I saw from the highlights. Maybe the rest of the game he was spectacular. But the Azpilicueta I know from last season never made any mistakes that I can think of. If he had one, he quickly corrected it to where you wouldn't even have noticed it was a mistake because of how well he covered for it. But because he was such a cover defender last year, he was the one that covered for the rest of our defense. Whenever they were making mistakes, he was there to cover for them. Because he's not doing as well, it does concern me. Are we going to start leaking goals because of this? Another thing that concerns me is the fact that this is the second time now that we've made a change where Rudiger comes in and Azpilicueta goes to the wingback role. I'm hoping that this doesn't mean he sees Azpilicueta as more of a wingback, and so with Rudiger coming in, maybe instead of saying, okay, well, do we take Cahill or David Luiz out, I hope it's not, are we taking Moses or Alonso out, and then Azpilicueta will move out wide. Just because I still think, even though he's having a poor preseason, once he gets back into his form, I still think he's the best defender we have back there. So, I don't know, it's just something that I noticed when I was looking at the subs. I'm like, I hope that doesn't become a constant thing where we see Azpilicueta being moved out wide, and now all of a sudden he's not back there anymore. Unless Rudiger can do it just as well as he can, in which case, great, we release him to go forward now, which would be pretty interesting to see how he does. I don't know, it's just something that I hope doesn't happen unless Rudiger can cover just as well as Azpilicueta can. I also saw Fabregas struggling a bit defensively. There were a few moments where I just noticed he wasn't really in the right position. He wasn't doing well. He wasn't doing as well as he normally does, just reading the game. It does kind of concern me just because I have talked a lot about him, and I have thought throughout most of the preseason that he's looked one of our better players. And so seeing him struggle today, I'm hoping it's just a blip. I'm hoping this isn't like now he's struggling because he's getting a little bit tired and he's not going to be able to handle the rigors of this title season. Are we going to be able to maintain it? I don't know. I hope he can continue to just improve from what I've seen so far this preseason because he's looked good for the most part. Defensively, he's obviously a little bit shaky because he's not a defensive player. But what he brings is good work. I think he works very hard for the fact that he doesn't have as much speed as Conte does. But he works very hard. I think he intercepts because he reads the ball or the play very well. And so he does well on the interceptions, and obviously his passing is incredible. So I hope he continues to feature just because I think he brings a lot going forward, and I don't know if Bakayoko will be able to do that or not. So another situation, kind of like Rudiger, where if Bakayoko can do it as well as he can, then maybe it's okay. But if not, I'd be concerned just because I don't know if last season watching Matic try to be the distributor that Fabregas wasn't good. And so I'm worried that that's going to happen this year too, with Bakayoko comes in, kind of like a Matic, but still can't distribute as well as Fabregas. So the final thing I want to talk about is Musonda coming in. I know you want me to talk about Murata. Honestly, didn't get to see much of him. I know he didn't. I didn't see any highlights from him, so I guess he didn't really have any good chances. I'm assuming after Hazard comes back, hopefully that'll help him out a bit. Having somebody up there that he can work the ball around with, because Pedro can, Willian not really. I don't know. I didn't get to see it, so I can't really talk about it. But Musonda came in, and in my opinion, that's encouraging. I think he's a player that when I saw him come in against Inter Milan in the last game, he looked solid. He looked like a player that could help us, brings a lot of energy, brings a lot of pace as well, and has a pretty good touch on the balls, as far as dribbling goes. So he's a player that could possibly combine with players like Hazard or Pedro or Murata. But yeah, I hope that he can start to work his way into the team a bit more, just because, like everybody else, I think we need to do a lot better with our youth program. I think they deserve more of a chance. They deserve to get the ability to, I guess, get a chance in the first team. Because last year Chalaba had a decent run with the first team, but then all of a sudden didn't have one anymore. Loftus-Cheek had a few games with the first team, didn't anymore. Ake came back from Bournemouth thinking, okay, he's going to get quite a few chances. Got like 2 or 3 games, and then got sold. So I think we need to do a lot better with our youth program. I think they deserve more of a shot. I think you got to develop. If you're developing them so much and they're winning trophy after trophy, at some point you got to say, okay, we have a very good youth program. Let's try to give them a chance to grow and become even better players because they're training with some of these superstars. So I hope Musonda can be one of those that has the ability to break in and just really gives us another option up there aside from just Pedro, Willian, or Hazard. Give us somebody else that if one of them is out or if somebody's struggling, isn't really playing well at the time, give us somebody that we can say, okay, here's somebody new that we don't know what to expect yet. Because that's, you look at some of these other clubs and that's what they have. Man U has Rashford. As soon as he came in, they were like, oh, look at this kid. He's just flying everywhere. He's doing so much. This is awesome. Liverpool has had a couple come in. I don't remember their names now, but there are a couple that they had last season that got to play quite a few games because they were playing pretty well. Arsenal, Iwobi was one, and Coughlin was another that really stepped up and was like, oh, look at these kids. They're stepping in and doing pretty well. Man City, I can't think of any. Tottenham has had a couple. Southampton practically thrives on their youth programs, so I don't know. Just looking at these other teams, that's something that they have that we don't really have, and it's something I do want to see more of. So those are just little snippets, though, on this game. Hopefully, if you guys have some opinions, you can let me know in the comment section below. I do want to try to discuss this a bit more, see what some other people's thoughts are, whether you're a Chelsea supporter or not. I want to hear some other people's opinions and find out, am I the only one that thinks some of these things? So let me know what you guys think. Talk about it, discuss, and see you guys in the next video. Peace out.